This video contains major and hardcore spoilers for the following media sources: Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4, Persona 4 Golden, Persona 5, Persona 5 Royal, Persona 5 the Animation, Persona 4 the Animation, Persona 4 the Golden Animation, all Persona 3 movies, and the Persona dancing games. I'm not holding anything back here, so if you've never played these games or watched the anime, please do not watch this video. Or if you want to watch a specific segment, you can go down in the description and click on the timestamps. These games, just like a good majority of all games, are meant to be experienced blind on a first playthrough. Please do not do what I'm going to explain and go play these games. But if you don't care about spoilers, or if you've already played these games, enjoy the video. And remember, you have been warned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Project P. And no, I really couldn't come up with a more creative name. A massive passion project based on one of my absolute favorite video game franchises of all time. It is currently top 3 and holds my personal favorite video game of all time. And I could talk about it forever. I've had many different journeys with video game franchises: Mario, Sonic, Pokemon, and more. I grew up with Nintendo games and didn't really venture outside the Red Company for years. When it came to Sony or Microsoft, I hardly knew anything outside of Halo, and the fact is, I've never even played a Halo game. Growing up with the DS, the Wii, 3DS, and Wii U, it's safe to say I had so much bias towards the console wars, and I had no idea what a PS3 Slim was. But in 2011, I was introduced to Super Smash Bros. Brawl, my key to stepping away from my comfort zone and learning what a fictional snake is. I learned and took interest in a ton of different franchises because of the diversity and variety of every Smash Bros. Roster, and that includes Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. Brawl introduced me to Metal Gear, Earthbound and Mother, and Fire Emblem. It also made me want to go deeper into Pokemon, Zelda, Kirby, and Star Fox. This became a consistent pattern alongside the eventual release of Smash 4, giving me proper introductions to other Fire Emblem characters, Street Fighter, Bayonetta, Animal Crossing, the extended history of Pac-Man, and the fact that he has more than 4 games. It's a huge benefit that comes with the entire Smash Bros. Franchise. All the representation, whether it be playable characters, trophies, stages, or even the smallest of cameos. There's something for everyone. But let's step into a time machine and move forward a few years after the final Smash 4 update, June 12th, 2018. It's E3 season and Nintendo is doing their usual, announcing new games and everything that comes with the biggest gaming convention ever. Rest in peace, E3. During the presentation, we got a 25 to 30 minute look at the new Smash Bros. Game that was announced a few months back. This was a huge moment and an incredible time to be a Nintendo fan. A massive presentation of what the next Smash game will become. Everybody was hyped up to see their favorite fighters come back home, especially the ones we haven't seen in a very long time: Wolf, Pichu, Snake, Young Link, and more. And yes, that includes Ice Climbers. No thank you. What a time to be alive. This was the peak of E3 in 2018, and it literally carried Nintendo all the way to winning the entire thing. Tons of announcements and character reveals throughout the rest of the year, as this was one of the most anticipated games of 2018. But before we get to the exciting date of the 7th of December, let's take a quick pit stop on the day before. I didn't know this at the time, but this would be the day that my gaming life would change forever for the next 6 to 7 years. On December 6, 2018 was the day of the Game Awards, and it was a pretty cool show, but this was the day that the Game Awards officially turned into a gaming presentation with Game Awards on the side. Near the end of the show, we got a mind-blowing announcement. As the screen goes red, I see a logo I've never seen before, and I have no idea what's going on. I thought this was an announcement for a new game, or some additional content being added to something I had no idea existed until then. A suave man dripped out in a black trench coat with a cool looking mask is being very flamboyant. Other characters in the background questioning what's going on, just like me. Apparently they've been invited to steal a treasure, and then the card from earlier flips and it's a Smash invitation. Everybody who knew this mysterious character was losing their minds, as we got a new DLC character confirmed for Smash Bros. Ultimate, as he'll technically be the first character part of the first Smash DLC pass, if you want to count Piranha Plant. This is Joker from Persona 5, and this was the start of my journey of becoming a huge nerd and a fan about a franchise with a passionate community, huge stories, memorable characters, amazing music, and more, even though I'm already a nerd as is. So, welcome to my very long and convoluted history with the Persona franchise. I will say, it is so unorthodox, but everyone goes through these things differently. From 2018 to 2023, this is my Persona history and timeline. Well, as accurate as I can remember. Let's get into it. The following day, Smash Bros. Ultimate was released and so much happened. Pichu was broken for a bit, CPUs would kill everyone when you had the ability to unlock them, and it took 4 months for us to get any information or gameplay on Joker. But eventually we would get a Smash presentation on April 16th. This would give us everything we needed to know about Joker, his gameplay, special moves, and everything in between. He was released the next day, and my god, he is an amazing character. He has been consistently top tier, and even the small nerfs he got over time didn't do much, and nearly every move was carried over from Persona 5. This includes Arsene, his main persona. Whenever Joker's meter gets full, he summons his primary persona Arsene, and he gets boosted as if he was struck with a needle. His basic and special attacks are more powerful, he gains a counter and a reflect, and he can fly. He becomes a much better fighter with Arsene, and even without him he's still really good. But let's keep moving forward. After a lot of being mad at my friend for being better than me and playing Joker all the time, shout out to my friend Secret Boots, we move into the month of July. This is where things start to go off the rails, but it's a fun time, and you have every right to question my motives. This was a very one-sided summer for me. It started with, well, I watched a playthrough of Persona 5 multiple times, and that's literally it. I hardly paid any attention to it because I had no idea what was going on. It was so flashy and all over the place, but in a good way. I was very interested in what I was looking at. My eyes were just all over the place, like wow, this is amazing. And I wanted to take a deeper look into this game, but I decided to wait on that part. My overall first impressions of Persona 5 was straight up confusion and questioning why this game was so long, but I was hooked. Now, this is where we start facing a dilemma. So I had no way of playing the game myself. I literally spoiled myself on the main game that I wanted to play for about 2 months at the time, and this was the start of a pattern. This was mainly under the assumption that I would never play these games at the time, so I originally thought, what was the point of waiting 10 years to get a PlayStation console when YouTube is right here? So that's what I did, and honestly, yeah, I do regret it. So moving on, the following month I decided to look into some of the past games of Persona. Since I started with Persona 5, I decided to go backwards. So next up is Persona 4. I did exactly what I did with 5, nothing really changed. I watched a playthrough of Persona 4 Golden, the definitive edition that was only released on the PlayStation Vita. I got a lot more from this game than its sequel. This part of the chapter went on for about 3 months. Something about Persona 4 really spoke to me as I watched a whole lot more Persona 4 content than Persona 5, but for those 3 months I've never wanted to play a game more than this at the time, but we got one more game to go. So moving back one more game, we got ourselves a fan favorite. Well, any of the Persona games can be fan favorites, but we're talking about one that a lot of fans believe is the best of the franchise. I personally disagree, but I can see where they're coming from. Persona 3. An eye-catching story, new gameplay mechanics, an interesting cast of characters, and more. This was the beginning of a new era for the Persona franchise after Persona 1 and 2. Take a guess what I did in November. Exactly. I watched a playthrough of Persona 3 and extra content that came with it. Not as much as I did Persona 4, but my attention was there. Darker tones, a bit more serious compared to Friendship the game over here. So overall, my experience with Persona started off very outside the box, but at least I had something to talk about and anticipate playing when the time came. I could only watch these playthroughs so many times without losing my mind, so let's move forward about a month. So outside of the main series of Persona, I went through a hardcore filler arc. Starting in December, I decided to take a look at the loaded list of Persona spin-offs. This went on until January, and I got a nice feel for these side stories and extra characters. I started off with Persona 4 Arena and took a look at how a fighting game with Personas would work, and I wish this got more attention from the competitive scene, but it is what it is. I also went through the sequel, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, which is the ultimate Persona fighting game as a true sequel with more characters and a new villain. Seeing an older C's interact with a fresh investigation team after the events of Persona 4 is some great fan service. And to think we got more of it with a very niche Persona game. If you've ever played the Etrian Odyssey games or played the first Persona game on the PS1 before the remake, you can tell that Persona Q was heavily inspired by both games, but mainly Etrian Odyssey. Traditional dungeon crawling, and both C's and the investigation team up together with some new characters, and it's Persona business as usual, just with a massive amount of characters, so many different combinations with party members and new Persona mechanics as well. It's an awesome way to change up the formula. This also goes for the unprecedented sequel, but it was bound to happen anyway. Persona Q2 is just more Persona Q with the addition of Persona 5 characters and the Persona 3 female protagonists. I never really looked into it because I was busy with other, better Persona content at the time, and that's a good way of me saying that I think dancing is better than first-person dungeon crawlers. The milking isn't over just yet. Time to move our feet to the rhythm and defeat shadows with the power of dance and friendship, because Persona 4 was the first dancing game. This is a fun time. We even see the crew dancing, Nanako being adorable as always, and some amazing music. So after the small boom of Persona 4 dancing, we would soon get Persona 5 dancing and Persona 3 dancing. But the biggest difference between those two and Persona 4 was that Persona 4 had a traditional story mode, but 5 and 3 went in a very different direction. I really like the dancing games, but they'll never be as good as the mainline games, and I think we all know that. Now let's move on to a time where things get a little weird on my end. More so for the better in the long haul, but at the time, honestly it sounds pretty stupid. It's pretty obvious that these games would conceptually make for a really good anime. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. The first Persona anime I watched was the Persona 5 anime. In my opinion, it's really mid and could have been so much better, especially since Persona 5 is the evolution of Persona 3 and 4. It has its ups and downs, but it's overall a cool watch. Next was the Persona 4 anime. There are two different anime here, the original and Persona 4 the Golden Animation. Persona 4 the Animation in my opinion is the best out of all the Persona anime that exists. It's a near perfect reflection of the original Persona 4 game. The progression is top notch and the pacing is very consistent. It's an amazing adaptation and I sorta kinda got carried away and somewhat addicted with this anime, but it doesn't show up until later on. But here comes another adaptation that isn't as good as the first, but I do prefer over Persona 5. The Persona 4 Golden Animation is interesting. Instead of reworking the entire anime, we get bits and pieces of the extra content that came with Persona 4 Golden, but also keeping to the original story the best it can. I think the main problem here is that there were only 12 episodes, so it really didn't have enough time to get everything together on a consistent basis. So it kind of felt rushed, and obviously with the addition of Marie, the extra Persona 4 Golden content, and more, it can sometimes feel bloated, but it's not absolutely terrible. It took me a while longer, but after I played Persona 3 Portable for the first time, I decided to watch the movies, and I love the formula here. Every season has their own movie based on that part of the game, starting with spring and ending in winter. Well, technically also spring, but you finish like playing the game in winter, whatever. As much as I love the Persona 4 anime, I will say the Persona 3 movies are the most beautiful looking amongst its competitors. The visuals are clean, animation is fluid, especially during the fight scenes. Overall, all the movies are really good, but I think it's right behind Persona 4 the Animation for me. Speaking of which, let's dive back into Persona 4 the Animation. Oh boy. This is me jumping the gun a bit since we're still talking about the anime, but this is very important as a part of my journey. After I played Persona 4 Golden for the first time, I went back to the anime, mainly as if it was a New Game Plus playthrough, collecting references, any information I missed out on, and more. But this kind of turned into an addiction. Not an unhealthy one, but it felt necessary, but it also felt not necessary at the same time. In the span of nearly a year, I've watched Persona 4 the Animation 13 times. That may not seem like a lot, but this was during my anime phase, and to think, I watched this more than my actual favorite anime of all time. I rewatched it every time I thought of Persona 4 and fell in love with it as it's a top 3 personal favorite anime of all time. So let's take a deep breath and reel it back and take the next step. So as my filler arc was at the start of its conclusion, there have been trailers for the next big Persona expansion. Persona 3 got Fest, Persona 4 got Golden, so it would only make sense for Persona 5 to eventually get an upgrade, and so we get Persona 5 Royal. What a time to be a Persona fan. Let's be real, Persona 5 wasn't perfect. There were some noticeable gameplay flaws, a terrible palace, and more. Persona 5 Royal nearly fixes everything and adds more content, an extra 2 months, new party members, confidants, better palace gameplay, new boss mechanics, elements, and more. Even the inclusion of the grappling hook that originated in Smash Bros. Ultimate. This allows Joker to have access to parts of a palace that we never had access to in the original game. You can tell this nearly completes Persona 5 as a whole, even though it still has some flaws. It's unfortunate that we're probably never gonna get a Royal anime, but it is what it is. There was a lot of hype going into this new experience, but we will have to wait a while for it, although I can say with confidence that it was 100% worth the wait. So, there goes the history lesson. Like I said, very unorthodox, spoiling myself to these games instead of waiting for the time I would have access to go in blind. I really wish I could play these games for the first time blind, but I was impatient. I knew my time would come eventually, and here we are now. This is the beginning of the experience and a turning point on my journey. It took at least a year and a half for me to finally play these games. I literally blue-balled myself for that long. How in the world am I still alive? But in the summer of one of the worst years of all time, there were rumors about a certain game coming coming to PC. The next day at a gaming showcase, it was confirmed that Persona 4 Golden would come to PC. I've been excited for games before, but I've never been more excited to play Persona 4 Golden. This was my time to finally consider myself a fan, and I would slowly have the opportunity to play the games I wanted to play. Starting off with my favorite. I bought Persona 4 Golden on Steam the day it came out, and I was all over it. I even left my friend group for a certain amount of time to put all my focus into this game. Nearly every single day, I will put at least 2 hours into Persona 4 Golden in the span of 7 months. For me, it was nothing but Persona 4 and the anime. I don't even know how many times I beat the game within that time span, but this was a turning point in my gaming career. I had officially claimed this game as my favorite of all time, and it still is. But I knew I had to move on, so let's go into Persona game number 2. So after my escapade with Persona 4 Golden, I remembered that there was a handheld version of Persona 3 on the PlayStation Portable. So this means I literally could have played Persona 3 Portable a long time ago at any point, even if it was through an emulator. I've never been so mad at myself. I could have introduced myself to Persona with a great game with Persona 3 and then moved on from there, but no, I just had to watch a playthrough of Persona 3 Fest instead of emulating the game and playing it on my computer. I've never been so mad in my life. So I downloaded PPSSPP, found a Persona 3 Portable ROM, and I played Persona 3 Portable. I absolutely love it. A strong story, interesting character development, but it's still relatively flawed, but not enough to make it unplayable or bad. I beat this game 3 times, 100% at once. Really appreciate the addition of the female protagonist, regardless of the highs and lows. Persona 3 is in my top 10 favorite games of all time, and I enjoyed my time with Cease and the limitations that makes this game so challenging. So, this is where we hit a bit of an interesting crossroads. During my time with Persona 3 and 4, we would get trailers for the next Persona 5 experience. A true sequel to Persona 5, Atlus gives us Persona 5 Strikers, a hack and slash warrior style game with a new story, new villains, new characters, nearly new everything. I was so excited when I saw that this was coming out in March, and then I realized that it was coming out first in Japan. And funny enough, I got my hopes up for a sequel of the game that I haven't played yet and knew I would be able to play because it was coming to the Switch. But after a bit of time, the US release came and I was on it automatically. It's an amazing game, a great sequel with a different formula with no traditional calendar system, and it takes RPG elements and adds them to a hack and slash game. It still makes the game really long, but not as long as Persona 5. It's a great way to give us more Persona 5, but also give us a different concept of gameplay and story. It's a great time, and I kind of beat it a good number of times. So after my time with Strikers, there wasn't that much else to fulfill at the time, so I decided to just go on a knowledge bender, and this started my second filler arc, and it lasted an entire year, alongside at least one playthrough of Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Strikers. I just wanted to learn as much as I can about the overall franchise of my favorite games and their respective timelines. From personas to characters to different arcs in the game, I learned so much from my many playthroughs of these games. Like I said, this second filler arc lasted an entire year because we didn't get that much new stuff at the time other than Persona cameos in other games. Not much else to say, but we still got more to talk about. You know what, here we go. I have a confession to make, and yes, I decided to keep it out so I can bring it up now. But Persona 4 Arena Ultimax was my first ever Persona game I ever played, and it was way before I wanted to get into the franchise. But I can't say that I was blind to the franchise at the time. I bought the game on my Xbox 360 and went through nearly everything the game had to offer, and didn't play it again until March 2022. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax made its way to the Switch, PS4, and PC, and take a guess. I did the exact same thing I did when I first played the game, and instead of maining Yosuke like I did before, I played Kanji, Risei, Narukami, and Junpei. Being able to re-experience this game with my newfound and deeper knowledge of the franchise felt a lot more rewarding, and it was cool to play this great spin-off again. Moving on to Etrian Odyssey with the Persona filter. I had downloaded Citra, the ultimate 3DS emulator, and got Persona Q and started that game up. Did I beat it? No, but I will eventually. I'm mainly scared of these goddamn babies in the third labyrinth, but I'll soon beat it. From what I've played, I'm really enjoying myself, and I'll soon conquer my fear of the Persona Q babies. So let's take a step away from the games and go over some more technological assets of this video. I'll save it for the conclusion, but I knew I wanted to create something like this. So I took some time and tried to remember when these events took place, and then I created the timeline. Looking back, I think I perfected the times and got it down packed. I started working on this video in 2022, and it's June 2023 when I'm finally writing this video. And as of then, it is now August 2023 when I'm recording this. I'm having so much fun, guys. I knew it was time to create a massive passion project. I did it better myself than what my junior high was forcing us to do way back when, so let's move on. I would say that everything has been leading up to this very moment, because this was the first Persona game that got me cranked on this franchise. Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal would soon come to all next-gen consoles. This was my time. To complete the saga, we got on October 21st Persona 5 Royal first, and soon got the other two games in January 2023. But I finally got to play Persona 5 Royal, 4 years in the making, and it was worth the wait because this is one hell of an experience. Added to my top 10 list of favorite games, it's amazing, it's what it was hyped up to be, and I had lots of fun. Don't get me wrong, I do prefer Persona 4 Golden on a personal level, and also the fact that I played that game more than 15 times. It's easy to debate which game you think is better. Me personally, I don't think it's coming from bias. I do believe Persona 4 Golden is the better overall game, but that doesn't take away from the easy upgrades that Persona 5 has. We'll go over that in another video though. Alright, as you can tell, I'm in love with Persona. It's my second favorite franchise ever. I consumed nearly everything I possibly could, and I loved all of it. After about a month when I finished writing this script, I stepped my foot into the Persona dancing games, and I'm having a blast, but it was very late, so I thought I would mention it now instead of leaving it out. I'm also finally playing through Persona 1 and 2. The reason why I never mentioned those games was because I never made enough progress to where I was satisfied mentioning them as their own segment. So I gave myself the ultimate question: what's next? Well, I have two deeper questions to answer. So the first question is, what's next for Persona? Well, since it's August of 2023 when I'm recording this video, we've gotten Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, Persona 5 Royal on all modern platforms, and we're getting a Persona 3 remake next year, and I am super ready for it. We also got somewhat of a mobile game and a new Persona 5 spin-off that I'm kind of paying attention to. We will see how that goes. The next question is, what's next for me after this project? Well, obviously I'm gonna continue making content, but it's time to branch out. So after this video, I will officially start creating Persona content. I was thinking that I could have done this a lot earlier, but I thought it would be cool to give people my personal story with this franchise. I'm excited to review these games, do challenges, and go deep into nearly everything I want to talk about. I won't become a Persona exclusive channel, but I will be making a lot of content regardless. I'm super excited, and I think it's about time I go through with this and stop holding off. I have no shame that I'm a self-spoiler, but don't worry, I didn't spoil myself for Strikers or Persona Q. But the fact that I played a sequel before the first should probably put me on a list somewhere.